Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a very special 100th episode of The Cup. Yes, we have made it to the big 1000. A lot of O's. But yes, exactly. We have made it to 100. Who would have thought 2 years ago when we started this little venture that we would have ended up here? So we are going to be doing a very special retrospective episode where myself, Mackenzie, co-artistic producer, Ryan Borochovitz, my other co-artistic producer, and our amazing associate producer, Jillian Robinson, will be giving a look back, commenting on our thoughts on our experience with this adventure we've been on, and then what we can look forward to in the next 100, or as Carly and Patrick said in our last episode, the next 1,000.
So a million, as they said.
Hence all the extra O's that Matt gave us there.
Exactly. And so we're going to start off, as always, with our classic question. Jill, what is in your cup and what is your ensemble today?
Okay, so I have a tiny bit of I have 100-word sentence for how I am the way I am.
Okay.
Basically, Ryan and I are at my parents' place in Windsor. So I figured I might as well go into my mom's closet to, pick something I haven't worn on the cup. So I found this super comfy, like mustard yellow cardigan. I just threw it over like a red tank top. And then I was like, oh, I kind of look like Winnie the Pooh. And Winnie the Pooh lives in the 100-acre wood. And we're doing the 100th episode. So boom. And then I found these cute little orange earrings they got like an orange heart because, we're going to be sharing and spreading and talking about lots of love that's been spewed over the cup of the last year. And then I was like, I sat down to where I'm recording and we just celebrated my niece's birthday. So we have these really fun celebratory napkins.
Woo!
And rainbow balloons. So I'm like, okay, I have red, orange, yellow. I happen to be wearing forest green athletic shorts right now, which you can't see. So I had to fill out the celebratory rainbow, and I have a blue chalice with some purple grape Kool-Aid. So I am celebrating. I am Winnie the Pooh bounding and a rainbow happy sunshine.
You went all out. Never cease to impress.
And Ryan, for you, what is in your cup? And I see you're wearing your iconic flannel.
Yeah, so
your staple look.
Well, yeah, it's like I only have so many shirts, so regular viewers of the show have seen all of them more than once at this point. But it's been 100 episodes. I don't have that many shirts.
What? You don't have 100 different shirts?
I definitely don't. I haven't even been on all 100 of those episodes, and I've still very quickly cycled through all my shirts. But I made a point of, like Jill said, we're at her parents' place right now, and I made a point of packing this shirt because it is the one that I wore in our very first episode, King Lear, episode 1. So I thought it was a good way to round out the circle. I also wore it in that short little video we did when we announced the new mandate a year ago. So I don't recall if that was deliberate on my part to as a callback to episode 1 then. It may or may not have been, but now it definitely is.
It's a lucky shirt.
Now this is your milestone shirt.
This is my milestone shirt. Just by total happenstance. And yes, as Jill said, we're at her parents' place, so you might recognize my background as Jill's background for the first run of the show when she was spending the early days of the pandemic here with her parents. So that's where I set up so we could be in separate rooms to record. So there you go. That's, I guess, a throwback. And because we're not at home and we don't have our usual roster of mugs, I'm using one of her dad's mugs that says Best Grandpa Ever. And I have coffee in it.
Well, today,
what's your ensemble, Mac?
Well, I mean, I broke out I'm pretty sure I wore this time episode, at least 1 or 2, but it is the Plays the Thing tie.
Nice.
It's nice.
It is my tie from Stratford, so it harkens back to King Lear at the very beginning. And I have broken out the Cup.
Someone has to be representing. Neither one of us have ours. Yeah.
As we represent somewhere, so I get to be the representative today. And I am drinking what am I drinking? A pink lemonade grapefruit drink with some Smirnoff.
Whoa, celebrate. Good times.
I know.
Woohoo, Matt.
Just a splash.
Just a
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers to us. 100 episodes.
Cheers to us, 100. Yes. Woo. And that's the episode, everybody. Thank you. Have a good day. Goodbye. Yeah. All right. No. But we got a lot to talk about. So let's get into it. So last week for our 99th episode, we shared a compilation of short testimonial videos from members of the Cup of Hemlock community. How would you describe your reaction to those videos? Ryan, we saw your reactions in the video, so we'll let Jill start this one.
Sure.
She was kind of the one who didn't get to see the final product before we released it because I edited the video. Ryan contributed the intro and outro. So Jill, you were kind of coming into it new Wednesday when we released it because we're recording this on a Friday.
Yeah, so visual viewers can already tell I'm beaming, grinning ear to ear, and that was the same reaction watching the video. It warmed my heart to see kind of like the return of support and space and love tossed back our way. Yeah, having some of our members that have been on multiple panels or have been on a variety of different types of cup veins, right? Like the interviews or a panelist or both. And to really take some quality time, whether it be a 30-second snippet or a 3-minute snippet, and either discuss their time that they've had at the cup, some things that, we've done for them as cup members, some things that they have seen in the theatrical community on our episode or with our episode that kind of inspired them or, helped augment them as artists. And I just love everyone's testimony was so genuine. And I think it speaks to, the community that we've sort of curated over the last 100 episodes. Yeah. And I look forward to continue working with the folks that have sent a testimony, with the folks that are part of the community that want to be on more stuff, with folks that are coming up new to the cup community. Yeah. It just makes me really happy and excited that as artists in this industry, whether it be in Toronto or beyond, we're all supporting each other however we can. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Love that. Ryan, do you have anything you'd like to add on?
I don't know how much.
Where you kind of summed up your feelings there?
Yeah, like I kind of said my piece there, and Jill, I don't know how much more I could add to what you said, but like in addition to this just being this lovely outpour of support from friends and colleagues, people we've maybe known for a long time, others we've met along the way, something that struck me while watching it was that, like, we're not delusional about our viewership being incredibly modest. We know that we're like a small little outfit. We've been doing this for a long time, made many episodes, but not a lot of people are watching or listening, and that's okay. But seeing these videos, to me, was a very nice reminder that what we do is meaningful to the people who come onto the show and the community that we've built around it, even if it's not necessarily equating to hard numbers in viewership and listenership, even if it hasn't found this massive audience, like the real beating heart of it yet. And maybe that'll come for the next 100 episodes. And like we've done like surprisingly well, honestly, considering how niche the content we do is. But I think what really makes this meaningful and worth doing, like at least from my perspective, and I imagine you two would probably agree, is the community that we've built around it, the people we get on, how much they seem to be enjoying it. And I think we see the evidence for that within the responses that we received themselves. So, like I wrote down a couple like choice sound bites, how we had Patrick and Carly talking about the impact that we have on the cultural landscape of Canadian theater. Isn't that just like a cool way to put it, that they, appreciate? Anthony Piccioni reflecting on the breadth of what we cover. Michael Roth, who really appreciated our glowing praise for his music in our reviews of The Tempest and Twelfth Night that he wrote to us, and then we extended that onto the platform itself, where he could come on as a guest and talk all about his illustrious career. Like, these are the people that we're doing it for. Like, it would be great if we also could then cultivate a much larger audience than we currently have, but even if we never do, I still think this is worth keeping at it for at least another 100 episodes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just think what really stood out to me was just the amount of appreciation that came from our contributors and past guests. Like even people who weren't featured in the video because they just didn't have time to get one in because of their own busy lives. Just the responses we got from that of, hey, love your work, wasn't able to get a video in, but just know I appreciated being part of this community and being part of this venture with all of you. And I mean, I think Alex's response was such a lovely encapsulation of that, was that we started this adventure back in the midst of a pandemic. And so just the fact that he said being isolated, but yet being able to find such a wide community that is international. I mean, we've had a lot of people from the US, we have people from the UK, we've had people from all walks of life in the theater community join us and have their chance to speak and connect and grow their own social network from being part of our wealthy cup that they all drinketh from, you know? So I think that was the biggest takeaway, was just, yes, Ryan, you're right. We don't have the biggest audience, but what we do have is a very appreciative network of people who are always willing to come back and share their thoughts on new pieces that they may not have heard about, or give their insights into a topic they're really passionate about. And I think that is what makes us unique in this arts community, is that we are not just searching for the hot topic or a social justice conquest that we want to jump on the bandwagon for. We are looking to give voices to people and just have, and to really just give general audiences an insight into what we as artists do when we're just sitting at the bar having a drink together, you know? I mean, Jill and Ryan, you two met when we were doing our group play reading. And we were talking all about the script analysis of Doubt and Fingernails of the Priest, right? Like, that's something that we get into in like our reviews, that type of conversation, and general audiences never get their insight into that. So the fact that we give artists the chance to show that we're not just performers on a stage, or the lighting designer or the usher, we are people who dive deep into work and have a great appreciation for it, really kind of gives a voice. That's something that our testimonials really shows, that people in the arts community really do appreciate just the chance to give their voice to something, you know? So, yeah, exactly. So, well, speaking of our origin story, let's get into the next question, which is, not many people know, but Cup of Hemlock was founded a few months prior to the pandemic starting in March of 2020. And it was intended to be a live performance theater company producing live works of classical and new artist works as well. But due to the effects of the pandemic, we had to pivot. And so we started doing the Cup as hey, this will only be a few months. Stratford's releasing some, some of their pro shop videos. Why don't we review those? Why not? Like, let's fill our time. We're all stuck at home. Let's do something fun. And that little seed of a concept transitioned us into becoming a YouTube podcast company that first and foremost produces the performing arts talk shows that you all are now watching. So what are your thoughts regarding this journey? Do you feel the new mandate that was announced roughly a year ago in August of 2021 has properly represented the company, the work that we do, and the current trajectory we are on? Ryan, I will let you lead this off.
Yeah, so it's interesting because, it is I guess, an unconventional journey usually when people start something that, is a podcast or reviews plays that, starts that way. And as you just summed up, we had this tumultuous journey. But the more I think about it, this, I think, comes to our decision, the three of us, to keep doing this even after the founding members of the company slowly, one by one, left. And we continued to decide, what, we like this show we're doing, so let's put all of our eggs in that basket. The more I think about that, I think about how everybody who goes to theater school starts a company eventually. That seems to just kind of be what, there's not enough jobs in the market, and if you want to keep doing theater, it's only natural that eventually you're going to start something with your friends and see if you can get it off the ground, But most of them fold after a year or two of just producing a couple passion projects that scarcely make back their budgets. I did this myself even well before Cup of Hemlock with Sad Ibsen Theater, which I've mentioned on a few episodes, but
it's still out there. It can always
it technically exists. I've never officially folded it because I don't need to. I just don't have to keep producing. There was never really a large company infrastructure. It was sort of just the brand name label that I did whenever I was self-producing. And if I ever self-produce again, I can dust it off, but it's not a company. Cup of Hemlock came about intending to be a company filling all the roles with this rigid, hierarchical infrastructure. But as we've kept doing this show, and it goes back to what we were just talking about with the testimonials, we have found a way to service the theater community more so than I think just self-producing works that we specifically might be passionate about, but then others may or may not care. We come from a very supportive community where I think people would still come out and see it to support us, but it would often just be that. Whereas by doing this show and, starting as just, hey, we watched these shows, let's come see our thoughts, and then evolving into we're interviewing artists from the community, bringing them into the network, and then eventually, once things started reopening, attending live performances and actually being part of the press coverage of them as they come out. I really think we found this quite interesting niche that, we'll talk more about the specifics of how we approach our content, but yeah, not a lot of people are doing precisely the kinds of work we do. And God bless anyone who does want to start their own theater company and invite us. We'll come see your show. But I think the three of us all agree that we don't necessarily need to be doing that ourselves, at least not under the Cup of Hemlock banner. But we really found something we enjoyed doing. Now, to bring that back to the mandate, since I know that's part of this question too, I feel like the mandate that we wrote about a year ago, the three of us together, really kind of speaks to what that wing of the company was always doing all along. But instead of treating that as basically promotional fodder for the live performance that we promise we'll eventually do, we've just decided that, yes, this is where we want to be devoting our efforts, and this is what this company can be doing. And I feel like we've done a good job of committing to that, just keep doing what we're doing, and just being clear that we are explicitly prioritizing that in all of our efforts. Now, not that I think we should change or update the mandate 1 year later, but if I could make one small edit to it now, I might want to do more to emphasize the importance of what we've been calling theater enthusiasts. Now, we include them in the mandate sort of as a third category of guests who might come on who might not necessarily personally identify as artists or scholars. We have artists, scholars, and enthusiasts. But I think, as the three of us have sort of internally been saying, and I don't know if we've actually ever even said this on the air, but maybe this will be the time to do it, is that we kind of really latched onto this idea of theater enthusiasts as a big part of what we've been doing and a crucial part of what could be the mandate and the types of works we generate. We often say that we're not theater critics, we're theater enthusiasts. What we do isn't theater criticism, it's theater enthusiasm. Mm-hmm. And I imagine that might be a motif throughout a lot of what we talk about over the course of this panel, but to me, I think that phrase, even if it's not necessarily in the meat and potatoes of the mandate itself, is definitely something that the three of us might be treating as a masthead moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Jill?
Yeah, I'd love to springboard off of that. I completely agree with what Ryan is saying. And I think just going back to, this is just me personally as an artist, some of our viewers, whether you just started listening to our episodes or from the very beginning, I repeat a lot of what I say. Quite literally in some of our episodes, I say I'm a broken record. And why I'm saying this now is because I've always kind of drummed through, like, it's so important to be talking about theater and practice and performance in a critical way. And I've said it more than once, I know that I have, of a lot of the times, and me identifying as a working actor gratefully throughout the pandemic and continuing to do so now. A lot of the times in a project, in a performance, in a piece, you have, the table read and you have the table work. But then once that table work is done, where, you talk about backstory, you talk about dramaturgy, you flesh out why this, why now. But once the table work is done, you are up on your feet creating the piece, creating the art, which is incredibly important. But that art, I would argue, would not be able to be fortified and genuine and real and honestly fulfill us being true storytellers unless there were some table work. And table work equals critical discussion and coming to opinions and discussion of opinions and reflection. And that's essentially what the Cup has been doing over this past year, whether it be we are watching a piece of theater live or mediatized, and then we get in and just talk about themes and production elements, et cetera, or it's a one-on-one artist interview and we're having them kind of tell their own story as artists, right? And how they came to be and what they're upcoming. So it's this element of community and of discussion that about a year ago, and especially beyond that, at the start of the pandemic, me as a very, my sort of acting career, I was just starting to sink my teeth into that stuff. And then the pandemic happened and things wanted to go dark so bad because there was no rooms where we could have those table discussions. There were no stages where we could tell those stories. And I instantly went to, okay, we need to continue having discussions as an arts community, whatever form that takes. And then enter Stratford releasing all of their shows. And that to me was a lovely liftoff in, okay, let's have these critical discussions. And then I remember I don't know if it was, I don't remember exactly, but like a few months later, I think it was me the three of us came to it together, but I was like wanting to interview some members, and a light bulb went off again of like, oh my gosh, that's another element of community that we can have, is this one-on-one discussion with another artist talking about like augmenting projects they have upcoming, or even just reflecting on who they are as a person, who they are as an artist, right? I remember in theater school too, and part of professional practice, there would always be, if you're really interested in an actor or an artist or a director or an artistic director, go ahead and shoot them an email and ask them for coffee. What is that going to hurt, right? The least they can do is say they're busy. But more often than not, they'll say, yeah, I'll meet you at Balzac's and we'll discuss, et cetera, et cetera. Well, when stuff was closed down, I was like, okay, well, how easy is this? Now I can email someone and like jump on a Zoom call wearing pajama bottoms and talking to Andre Sills or something, like, so
David
it
Collins.
just, yes, David Collins. Like, so it just kind of, again, it was another thing of another silver lining over a lot of tumultuous stuff that's happened over the past couple of years, was there is such close access to community and people and genuine conversation via Zoom, this media that we've kind of dumped ourselves into. And so, so I feel like I'm tangenting a little bit, but going back to the mandate, but I think that's exactly what we're doing now. And I think so often in this industry, especially from a practical side, which I'm very much entrenched in, getting back out on stages and doing things, it can be very easy to kind of go through the motions with blinders on and really focus on, your trajectory, what is going on around you. But I'm always a firm believer in any piece that you're a part of or any company that you're a part of, the story and the acting put into the story will thrive times 1,000 when the whole cast and the whole community is working together to support each other. And so that's what I'm looking forward to. And that's what I love that our mandate does too, is it is encouraging artists, scholars, enthusiasts to just talk about the art and support each other in the art. Because I've said it once, I'll say it twice. Theater criticism, yes, I believe should exist. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Art should be critically analyzed, sure, but we are still rebirthing ourselves as artists, scholars, actors, enthusiasts from a very dark, non-theatrical time. And there's room for critique, sure, but I think there's a hell of a lot of room for enthusiasm, because we all need to kind of work together to kind of create this in-person community again and have it thriving and encouraging as opposed to shunning, So I'm going to step off my little mandate soapbox and toss it to you, Matt.
Sure. I mean, for me, looking back at our origin story, as it were, I think it's a true representation of how good art works, because a good artistic venture or endeavor is fluid. It's ever evolving. No art should ever be static or complacent or just flat. Like a good piece of art grows and changes as new perspectives, new concepts are presented, and the work molds. We should never freeze something. And so I think the fact that when we were faced with this uncertain pandemic lockdown time, and we were able to find alternative things to produce that ultimately became the flagship program we now do, I think that's just a beautiful representation of the great art journey that that many artists and projects go on in their creation process. Like what's a good example? I'm trying to think of a good show example that people would know. I'm drawing a blank.
Anyone people don't know.
Oh, that's true. All right. West Side Story. West Side Story started out as East Side Story, focusing on the Catholics and the Jews. The artistic team went, we don't connect with this. Let's shake it up. Hey, juvenile delinquents, West Side Story, Puerto Rican immigration. that seems to be more our cup of tea. Let's write a piece about that and let's evolve that. Leonard Bernstein took music he was writing from another show. It wasn't fitting in that show, so he brought it over and created new songs for West Side Story, and thus the piece was born. That's what we kind of did here. Was we were presented with a problem of, hey, we can't produce live theater because there is a global pandemic that is literally preventing us from leaving our homes. So let's take these lemons and make some lemonade by doing some Stratford reviews. And that's what we did. And then that grew into the artist interviews, which was the next thing. And then that eventually evolved into the roundtable discussions and the Proudly Present series, where we did staged readings. And then we also did COH shorts, which are just our scene work. And then we've evolved into the duet reviews that we've done. And now there's even potentially more shows coming. We did Nicholas Nickleby. Like all these things have grown. Like all these things have grown from this one slight pivot in the road that we took. And I think that's a true representation of how good art works. Good art takes something that may not have worked out at the initial part, but then turns it into something else that actually is prosperous and has lots of fruit to give, you know? So I think our journey is actually a very good representation for general audiences of how does art get made. So I definitely say, Ryan, you could use us as a textbook example in your theater classes at school.
I could, but that might feel self-indulgent.
That's okay. Self-indulgence good every once in a while. It's always
but Mac, well said, and I think something that we don't talk about enough is that, like, the fact that we even started reviewing the Stratford stuff in the first place, that was all. You already had your musical podcast before the Downbeat. You kind of had the good sense of knowing how we could approach this, and just. At the time, you were just, were you even yet the marketing manager, or were you?
I was general assistant.
Yeah, you were the general assistant of the first iteration of Cup of Hemlock, and you just proposed, hey, this is something we can do while we wait a couple weeks at most to finally get our shows off the ground.
Exactly. And, we'll be back in June.
We'll be back in June, of course. But yeah, like, I think that was just some brilliant initiative there that really did spin off into something truly special.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then we've all layered. I mean, I think I would like to give our viewers, listeners, a tiny peek behind the curtain of the three of us have been a well-oiled machine especially over the last year.
You should see our spreadsheets.
We have spreadsheets, but I think too, that's a thing that this has kind of worked. Like we all have the core values of community comes first, and we are all equally passionate about the discussion of the arts, as well as execution too. Like we're all sort of have our foot in like a different facet of the industry right now too. Mac, you with at Medieval Times and doing sort of like a marketing avenue there. Me practically acting, getting my hands wet with dramaturgy, or not dramaturgy. Well, a little bit, I guess. Dramaturgy, stage management, direction. Ryan, you doing your PhD for performance theater and drama at U of T and teaching the darn thing. Like the three of us kind of coming together with very different aspects and sort of leanings and gleanings into the craft, but the same foundation. And then practically getting up these episodes, holy smokes. It's like Ryan does the write-up, and sometimes maybe I'll edit the write-up, and Mac does the actual editing, and we'll do all of our imaging, and I'll do some interviewing and scheduling. Like we all, I think, pass the torch beautifully. And I just think we owe to our listeners and viewers that this sort of exposing this sort of relationship, that it isn't, we're not just putting up this episode. Like we are all a really supportive team of each other. And I think that's what also helps to make, especially this past year, to thrive the way it has. So go team.
Well, go team.
What's on the back?
I mean, Jill, you kind of alluded to the next part because you talked about all the shows we produce. So after producing this show for about a year and a half, almost 2 years now, we've made 100 episodes. Woot woot. Yeah. Do you have a favorite episode or a few favorite moments from our past 100 episodes that you would like to shout out?
Yeah, I think I'll just kind of nutshell mine because mine's kind of bookended a little bit. So I want to start with some of my tried and true and favorite episodes were our original ones, our King Lear and our Coriolanus. And I think, again, just talking back from coming out of, there was a couple months of nothingness, right? If everyone kind of remembered, March 2020, we kind of went dark, and I didn't really pick back up till the end of May, mid-May or whatever. So that April of 2020, I was like, oh my goodness, I need to be doing something, especially because I felt my trajectory was kind of going up, and then bam, the global pandemic happened. And so when we decided to do these panels and I was invited to be a part of them, I nerded out hardcore. I remember watching and like color coding my answers. I had my notebook, which I still sometimes do, but now that I'm comfier, I'll kind of go off the cuff too. But yeah, I remember like itemizing all of my answers, and the discussion was so rich. I think you could tell that all four of us on both those panels were extremely excited and enthralled to just keep some sort of a flame alive, you know, and what an awesome opportunity to dig into to Stratford's works too as the catalyst for the show. Speaking of that, a highlight episode for me too were the Merry Wives of Windsor, where we had David Collins and Bridget Wilson on, and that was just a really fun, like colorful panel. I think it was a perfect combination of professionals talking shop mixed with just some fun, cheeky statements and laughter. And I just found it was a perfectly packaged episode. And then pivoting to interviews, I actually think like the Cup interview sector of the Cup is probably like what my favorite, if not my favorite vein of the Cup, just because it does allow for that intimate sort of one-on-one getting to know you kind of conversation or catching up with old pals. So two things I want to, interviews I kind of want to shout out is George Alvizos and Cameron Grant. Both of them were in theater and drama studies at UTM Sheridan when I was there. They were both either like several years above me or below me, but for the 4 years I was in that program, they were a part of my journey as much as I may have been a part of theirs too, because across the 4 years in that program, it is quite intimate, regardless of what year you are in. So you see these people grow and watch them grow. And it had just been a while since I had caught up with both George and Cam, and it was kind of killing two birds with one stone, getting them in a Zoom room and interviewing them for the Cup, because I so much have been following their trajectories as artists. So I was able to kind of hear more about that and augment what they have upcoming and how they have sort of waded through this global pandemic. And then also it was just a way of, catching up as pals and supporting friends in the craft, which I think is equally as important. So yeah, a little specific shout outs. And I don't think hasn't been an episode where I haven't been like, yes, I love that we're putting out this content and we're supporting these people. This isn't like a specific episode to shout out, but just kind of harkening back to the fact that we're reviewing live theater stuff now, because live theater, allowing the end conclusion of those episodes to be sort of like tangential advertising for these companies and these pieces. That's also been super rad and cool for me. So lots of things. I love the Cup. Mac, what about you? What would be your answer?
Well, I mean, I have a few things. So my first one is in our Amadeus episode, where Ryan and I had one of our most heated and iconic debates over the performance of, I forget that lead actor's name.
It was, Gillen. He wasn't not Littlefinger, but maybe his brother. We don't know. But
yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
Yes, Ryan and I's emphatic debate about this, and just Andrew and I forget who our fourth.
Yeah, Allie was on that one too.
Allie was on that one too. Yeah. Just the two of them sitting back going, let's see these two duke it out with each other, because Ryan and I were not giving each other an inch in that argument.
To be clear, they were both on my side of that debate.
I don't know. I think Andrew was on my side.
We're not relitigating this.
To be clear, if I'm not in the room, clearly there's no middle ground, and you guys are just two dogs in a cage.
But no, I agree. That was such a fun, amicable debate.
It was. And then a follow-up to that was when we did our Oklahoma episode, and Ryan's frustrations in that episode of just the weird way they decided to film that, where the audience was shown at the beginning, at intermission, and at the end, but we never heard a peep from them.
Dead silence
throughout the rest of the performance.
The most unattentive audience ever. They would not cheer after a single song.
No. And then also just Ryan's frustration dramaturgically about how the piece decides to end in just his, what the hell is this piece that Mac has foisted upon me to do? So that was another one I had a good chuckle at when we were doing that one.
So far, it's reflections of Ryan on the cup has been Mac's highlights.
Yes. Well, now Julie,
love you
gets
too,
one with you, which is our Les Mis concert reviews. That was a lot of fun to go back to revisit stuff that, I grew up with. Hold on, stand by. I have.
It's either a Sondheim anthology or something Les Mis.
Or
it
Brothers
is
Grimm.
my official Les Mis VHS.
Wow.
That
It's a
I have
vintage.
that up. Yeah, it's a vintage one. So the fact that I was able to share that with Jill and then just getting her live Facebook message updates as she's watching each concert, doing the I hate this actor, what is this singing, I love this drop, like I just the ongoing play-by-play the weekend before we recorded a response to video to the 3 different concerts we had to review. So just watching Jill's reaction to all of them was quite amusing, and it became, I think, to date our only 2-part duet review. We had to split it in half because it was it was close to 3 hours of content. Yeah. So we were like, we got to split this sucker in half. So we did that. So
it was our intent to try to make it the same length as the musical itself.
Exactly. It was our intent. We went in knowing that's what we were going to do.
Which we succeeded in doing for Nicholas Nickleby.
We did. Yes, Les Mis was the lead up to Nicholas.
#9.
So then the last highlight for me is really more of a thank you. And that is to Bridget Wilson, who all the way back in episode 3, when I took a shot in the dark, messaging her saying, hey, we're this fledgling little theater company. The pandemic's thrown us for a loop. We're now reviewing pieces that you have been a part of. Would you be at all willing to grace us with your wonderful presence and come and sit down and review, not really review, more just have an open dialogue discussion into your process, into the piece that you were a part of. And that was with the Scottish play where she played one of the witches. And then that just blossomed into her coming back for Pericles and Merry Wives. And she came back into Cyrano. And she has just been one of our
We interviewed her too.
Yep. Which one?
We interviewed her also.
Yes. We did also did an interview. Ryan did the interview for that. And just she's been one of our constant supporters. Like she's always been willing to give insights to help us get in contact. She got us in contact with Tim and Irene for Henry VIII. Yep. Like she's just been someone who has been a constant supporter. And so the fact that we had such an esteemed member of the arts community willing to just kind of take the chance and sit down with us and be so open and welcoming and just not doing the no, I don't have time for this, or no, I don't want to do this, or no, I don't like doing these types of things. I don't like being out there and talking, giving my insights. So the fact that she was just so willing to be open and giving to us as just a fledgling company, I think was just a beautiful thing and just a true part of what every good artist should do, which is to pay it forward. You know, like she talked about it in her interview, how that is something that she really is all about, of supporting up and coming writers with her writing group that she has in Stratford, and just working with young artists at the festival, making sure they are welcomed and find their way in that big, in that very big world of the Stratford Festival. Like she is truly someone who all artists who are in the mature era of their time should be emulating, because I think that's a really important piece of what we do as artists, is that we should all be working in some way, shape, or form to pay it forward to the next generation.
Absolutely.
I just want to give her a big, huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for just responding to the message and answering the beacon, answering the call and just coming to sit with us, So yeah, Bridget Wilson, if you are watching this, I hope you are. I know you've now taken a well-deserved step back to enjoy more time with the family and all that good stuff. So we hope you watch us. If not, we'll definitely be seeing you, because I know we're all going to try and get out to see you at some point. So stay tuned for that. But we definitely love you, and we want to say thank you. So yeah, Ryan.
Yeah. Well, first of all, just wow. I had also forgotten that her first appearance was the 3rd episode of this show. Like, we really were like nothing. I don't even think we had released episode 1 when we recorded episode 3. Like, that's yeah. What a crapshoot she took on us. And like, yeah, we really do appreciate that. Thank you, Bridget.
What a crapshoot.
You've been a wonderful presence on all those episodes. I had such a hard time picking episodes to shout out because I just love so many of them. I will say it's funny, Mac, that you brought up Oklahoma because that was one that made my list too. Because, well, it's funny, backstory on that. I believe I was on standby for that episode. Well, again, that's something we may or may not talk about this occasionally. I don't know how often we bring it up, but we often have one of the three of us on standby to whichever who wasn't planned to be on the episode in case somebody drops out, that we don't have to cancel or reschedule at the the last minute. So
Peek behind the curtain. Sorry.
Yeah.
I just like that we're doing this. Okay,
this is the episode for these peaks. Yeah. So I was on standby for Oklahoma, and I got the call like mere hours before the recording that somebody had dropped out and I hadn't yet watched the show at that point, and I wrote the episodes together, but I was like, Mac, I don't know anything about this play other than the one song that everybody knows about it. Like, you write the questions, I'll proofread them for grammar, I guess, but like, I cannot be of any help for this. But I knew I would be on standby, and I intended to watch the show, but then didn't get around to it until really like 2 or 3 hours before the call. So I finished watching this play like really minutes before we started recording. And those who watch it will know the ending baffled me. My brain was short-circuiting trying to make sense of this ending, and we had a question specifically about the ending that I remembered approving, and that had also spoiled the ending for me because I knew what was going to happen because I contributed to those questions. But seeing how it actually unfolded was mind-boggling. And like, I know Oklahoma is it's a hashtag problematic show for a lot of reasons, and I think like a lot of our Indigenous peers and colleagues have a lot of harsh words for it. But even if you put that aside, which I'm not inclined to, but even if you put that aside, the ending of this play makes no goddamn sense for reasons that I don't need to say again here. You can just watch that episode. But like, the more I've thought about it since that recording, the more things I think about why it doesn't make sense. Like,
I still love that piece.
Yeah, I think like the music's great, the characters are compelling, like whatever, and it has an important place in musical theater history. But I'm just like, whoa, Rodgers and Hammerstein, you kind of dropped the ball on this ending.
It was their first attempt. Don't forget, nobody's ever done what they did.
I like Sound of Music a lot, so I'm not trying to poo-poo on Rodgers and Hammerstein, but
Stay tuned for our whole Rodgers and Hammerstein series, where Ryan and I go back and revisit every show of
I will have to be on that episode so that, yes, we actually get through questions.
Yes. No, but so yeah, that episode, just because of like how much I still keep thinking about that show, like after, and like I really just like how organic me spewing those thoughts out, like after having just seen it, like that was quite a special moment. But some others I'd really like to shout out. Nicholas Nickleby, of course, gets like the entire Endeavor, all 9 episodes, 10 episodes coming up soon. I'll say no more about
behind
that.
the curtain.
But yeah, that was just such a fun, like, in addition to producing this, like the regular episodes of this weekly for like 2 or 3 months, Mac and I would meet a second time every week to record an episode of that. So yeah, we had such a fun time, even though I had my problems with the production as a whole. We really did allow ourselves the time to really take it as it came and encounter it in this interesting way that sort of replicated the way that Dickens's own original audience might have encountered the story in serial form.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was a really special thing. If I have to pick one episode from that in particular, episode 7, because I'm usually positivity guy on so many of these episodes. That was one where I really just
Oklahoma.
like. Well, okay, there are some times I let myself let loose. But yeah, episode 7, it was kind of fun to just hate so many of the decisions that were made in that one and just kind of have at it, even though I was overall happy with the entire endeavor by the end. That one episode almost killed it for me. I have to give a special shout out to the ML Rio interview.
Yes.
That is, to date, I think our most viewed, certainly on YouTube. I don't know what the stats are on the podcast side as well, but I think it has like over 3,000 views on YouTube, and it's like, it gets new views every day. Like, I don't know. Yeah. Like, it's purely just because of her. Like, none of our other videos even come close to that. Like, she clearly has a good following, well deserved. I loved her book. But yeah, like that has been a very popular episode. And that was kind of when we first started pitching the idea of doing interviews. That was one that I like really wanted to make sure. Like, and that's the thing, Jill, you talked about how, in theater school, they say just call up such and such artist and have a talk with them. But like, that's something that I very rarely felt comfortable doing if I didn't have something specific to pitch them on or talk to them about. And especially someone who's not in your local community, but just like a novelist who wrote a book you like, I would never think to, it would just be fan mail basically, which you could do, but that wouldn't really make sense to just be like, I liked your book, thanks for writing it, but but then, as soon as we had this podcast series where we do, in fact, do interviews, I'm like, this could actually be an interesting way to not just write to this person whose work I admire, but actually get to sit down with her and talk at length about all the twists and turns of her book, which was really exciting. So, okay, couple more lightning round that I'm going to go through.
All right, lightning round.
Warhorse, obviously, I got to say my whole Warhorse rant, which, and it was just fun talking to Susan and Montana on that one, but in general, but yes, I had a lot of thoughts about Warhorse that had been bubbling up for years, and I finally got to spew them out in an open forum there. It was the anti-Oklahoma, which was just completely impromptu. Okay, just watch this thing, let's go. Warhorse is something I've been thinking about for a long time.
Different versions of spew.
Yes, different versions of spew. Tusicle. That's just a fun episode. That was a fun, unconventional piece. It was nice talking to Allie about that. It was one of the earliest duet reviews we did. And yeah, that's something that I remember reading about at the time and thinking, well, that's a fun, silly premise, but then not even thinking that I would ever actually even watch the thing. And then we watched it and did an episode on it. And that also became like a pretty popular video for a while because there was a lot of very online people who were very invested in that show. And one last one I'll shout out. Not much to say about it, but I really liked the Red episode. The Red episode is a solid. It's Mac, you, me, Ed, and Max Ackerman.
Yes.
We just had like a really like solid, like fruitful discussion. That was a lot of interesting
about kitchen
perspectives.
Sinks and running water on stage.
Yes. Well, I think that was the first of our many discussions about that topic. But yeah, I just think that's a solid one that never really got the love it deserved. It's a bit more of an obscure contemporary play than a lot of the things we cover. But yeah,
give the Alfred some.
Yeah, Alfred Molina was great in that production. Everybody should watch the production.
Alfred Enoch was in that too.
Alfred Enoch was also good in it. We're sorry that you don't get as much praise as your other Alfred co-star.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many great moments from past episodes. I mean, we had our musical and Shakespeare Roundtable. Tables that were lots of fun, a lot of great discussions in those. We had so many good ones. Like we had our Nutcracker episode, which is another highly popular episode. One of our most unexpected surprises was seeing the number for the Nutcracker.
People love the Nutcracker.
Apparently, people love that Nutcracker ballet. And the fact that it was the only time where we've had an issue,
that and Angels in America Part 1, which has since usurped Nutcracker as the most watched review on YouTube. Wow. So it's the 2 times we have technical difficulties that have struck the video quality. We should do that more often because I guess the audience loves it.
Exactly. But yeah, I remember editing the Nutcracker being like, who's going to watch still photos of our faces intercut with some pictures from the production? And then sure enough, it proves to be...
Everybody did.
Yeah, people really love the Nutcracker. So yeah, lots of fun there. Who knows what we're going to be doing this holiday season? Stay tuned for that. So, all right, let's get to the next question, though, which is the bulk of our content consists predominantly of theater reviews. What are your thoughts on our distinct style of reviewing, which is something that was created when Ryan and I first started our Stratford reviews, where it was myself, Ryan, and I believe Will, one of the original co-founders, was in there too, where we all kind of sat around and went, okay, let's figure out our review format. Let's try and figure out some questions, some concepts. So Ryan, as someone who helped initially create the format, what are your thoughts on it?
Okay, lots of thoughts. Shocker, I know. I'll try to be as concise as possible, but I think there are basically 3 things that make our specific brand of reviewing special. The first one is dialogue, is that theater critics can get themselves into hot water when they frame their subjective opinions and perspectives as authoritative appraisals that all must agree with, lest to be accused of having objectively bad taste, which isn't a real thing. But they can attempt to mitigate that perception by qualifying their assessments with a reiteration of their subjectivity. That's just one critic's opinion, man, etc. But the form of most reviews, being monologues essentially, tends to make the authoritative posture inescapable. It's one person telling you whether or not you should see the show. So, by bringing together multiple voices and perspectives with varying degrees of prior familiarity or expertise on the piece in question, or even on just the art of theater, And putting them on a level playing field, we generate richer discussions that are never limited by a single person's preferences or blind spots. And I think that's very important. And I've noticed that other critics are maybe following our example. Intermission Magazine, whose senior editor, Ashley Murphy, has been a very frequent guest of ours, has published at least, I believe, 3 reviews earlier this summer, the one on Anne Juliet, one on Every Little Nookie, and their non-review / article on Kim Lupa, that also kind of followed this dialogical format. So I wonder where she got that idea from. But no, I'm not saying that like in a catty competitive way. I think it's good that we are having this influence and people are recognizing that there is value in putting multiple voices in dialogue about these pieces. So that's very good. And honestly, I think you sort of alluded to something like this earlier, Mac, but this is how most non-critics engage with art and media. You see a show, you talk about it with your friends afterward, usually over a drink. And I like how we've taken that premise that we're all so familiar with and turned it into a maybe new kind of criticism or a new way of approaching criticism. That dialogue feels so important to what we do. And talking through your thoughts with another person can often change your opinions about something or expose you to perspectives and interpretations that you hadn't previously considered. This is why I kind of, even though we didn't pick the name Cup of Hemlock, I kind of like that we've committed to it and kept it here because, it's an allusion to Socrates from the various dialogues of Plato. And the Socratic dialogue is this format where through talking out your ideas with another person who maybe will be a bit of a contrarian and maybe say things just to get you to throw a wrench into your thinking, that you might actually change your perspective. So I think, even if we didn't choose it, and it certainly wasn't chosen for this type of company, for this type of show, I really think, dialogue is so inherent to what we are. So Cup of Hemlock and that Socratic ethos very much fits into it. So that's the first one, dialogue. Number 2, long form criticism. So most reviews are mercantile in nature. They fall into the category of consumer criticism, which boils down the complexity of a show into little more than, was it good, should you see it? Now, there's also academic criticism, on the other hand, which goes into way more detail, but is almost exclusively targeted towards a very niche audience of fellow academics. So what I think we've done here is we've tried to marry the two by bringing the depth of long-form academic criticism into a form that feels more casual and, we hope, more accessible to anyone who might just be tuning in without this familiarity and expertise. We're not restricted by column inches of newspaper reviews, so we give ourselves the freedom to say as much as we want and dig as deep as we can, knowing that, people can pause this over time. They don't have to listen to it in one sitting, so we don't have to feel like, oh, this is getting too long, let's just cut our thoughts here. We really let ourselves dig deep into the meat and potatoes, and I think that's very important. And the third one, which is kind of an extension of the other two, but it's dramaturgical criticism and balancing that with performance criticism. This goes back, Mac, to what you were just saying, that first meeting we had where you, me, and Will tried to iron out exactly what we wanted this to be. And I think we made a very smart decision then to have the first half of the episode be responding to the specific production. Which actors did you like? What were your production elements? Would you recommend it? Et cetera, et cetera. But then we have the second half where we just, put on our sort of high school English brains or dramaturgy brains, however you like to put it, but specifically with the Shakespeare.
Sounds good.
Yeah, but specifically with the Shakespeare stuff, I think that's an apt comparison because we ask questions like, do we think Iago has reasonable motivations for the way he acts? Like, that's a classic grade 12 English essay prompt, but it's something we haven't thought about maybe since grade 12 English, and maybe you think about it watching the play, but then if you're just asked questions about which actor did you like, you might not even get an opportunity to dig into those thoughts. And as much as it's important to cultivate the artistry of what the performers and the production people and directors are putting into this work, at the end of the day, we encounter these works because we care about the stories, the characters, the themes, and so much of that short form consumer criticism really doesn't dive into that very much or only scratches the surface of it. And I like that. I've said this before, or I definitely said this on Anthony Piccioni's podcast when I was a guest on that, talking about the Cup, is how, and anyone who watches our episodes probably knows this about me, but I wouldn't say I phone it in, but we kind of have sort of maybe like milder answers during like the first half questions when it's always about just like the production elements, but where I get really animated into the discussion is always in the second half of the episodes. Because that's when and I'm a dramaturg and critic. There's a reason why these are two of the jobs that you're technically qualified to do after graduating with a bachelor's in theater history or theater studies, because they are very similar transferable skills. And it really just kind of means diving into these pieces and asking the right questions and seeing what sort of fruitful things come out of that. So
Mhm.
dialogue, long-form criticism, dramaturgical analysis, I don't see a lot of critics doing those kinds of things, and I think that is what makes our unique style of criticism kind of something special.
Darn,
Mhm.
Jill, how do we follow this up?
And genuine. Yeah. Like picture perfect package thing that Ryan just said. I will copy and paste that to my answer. And also, I know we're going to be talking about this as the episode goes on too, but so I don't want to bleed into this answer too much, but I do love that, when it kind of harkening again back to, I've said harkening a lot, but I guess that's my word for this episode. Harkening back to the beginning of the pandemic when all we did have was, okay, let's pull from Stratford at Home. Let's pull from Broadway HD or National Theatre. This is, a piece that's existed from like 2012 or a couple years back. And here's our sort of, we got into a formula of, as Ryan was saying, the first half production element, favorite actor, would you recommend? And then talking about the story, the foundation that the production comes from dramaturgically.
Mhm.
So that formula worked for that. But a thing that I love that we've done is we've sort of evolved to drafting up a questions for live performances that are either directly in Toronto or performances that are in Stratford, etc. We've kept sort of a template, but there's wiggle room as to the types of questions that we're asking and kind of information that we're augmenting. Like,
Mhm.
I love that we've made that switch too, because for something that exists, say on, National Theatre at Home, that was a production that happened in 2012, we're sort of talking back on that production. So as
Yes.
opposed to, we review And Juliet, which is happening right down the street from us, and 3 weeks ago, and in person we're reviewing it, the question structures change. We're sort of asking ourselves different questions, or we're bringing up different ways of talking about the piece because it's happening now. And I just love that we've had that malleability now and again, I think that is a testament to us as the Cup curators not phoning it in, right? We see a piece of theater, whether it be one that existed a couple years back and it's only available as a pro shot, or whether it's one that, as I mentioned, is down the street from you and we're talking about it now. We sort of focus in on what are we reviewing, why are we reviewing it, and how are we reviewing it. And again, talking back to a lot of the stuff that is local and live, or stuff that is friends or colleagues that we know, or pieces that are in our neighborhood, we kind of go the extra effort to sort of augment their work as much as discuss it as well, because I think that's equally as important too. So yeah, I guess the only thing to add to Ryan's is like I love that we have our formula, and I love that we also are very present with how that formula is shaved down or added to, depending on the piece of work that we're discussing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, piggybacking on all of this, I mean, I just think what's great about our format is it gives not only ourselves but our fellow artists the chance to not only openly discuss the given production, but also allows them to dive deeper into the textual side of the piece and break it down to a deeper level, like as we talked about, that often we do behind the curtain in a rehearsal room at a table read, but general audiences like my parents would never in a million years see us deep dive into the text like we do in our reviews. So I think it's great giving the audiences a better chance, because I mean, I was speaking with my dad about this, who watches our content, is that he often goes, I wish there was more of this type of textual conversation, because there is so much juicy nuggets in the text that for general audiences who are hearing Hamlet spoken for the first time, or hearing the lyrics of Into the Woods spoken about for the first time, may not catch all the ins and outs that Sondheim or Shakespeare gave the actors to work with. That they're having a lot of fun, but to general audiences, it goes right over their heads because they're not sitting with the libretto or the script going, yes, when Hamlet talks about this, he is really meaning this.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're doing this homework, and it's applicable to, as Ryan said, to a high school English class who are also reading Othello or King Lear or Macker's or Hamlet or Romeo and Juliet, or we haven't done Midsummer yet, but we will, or Midsummer, like all these pieces that are classically done in school. Like I feel actually a lot of our questions are not just reading comprehension questions, because that's something Ryan and Will and I really strove to do when we first made our first round of video questions, when we looked at Stratford's list and went, okay, let's do Romeo and Juliet, let's do all of these, and we're gonna go beyond just the classic reading comprehension question of what do you think Iago's motives were? It's no, let's see, let's put his motive to the test. Let's see if we can find the valid argument of, is he justified in his hatred for Othello? And the fact that we then bring people on like David Collins, who brings up the whole concept of Othello being a propaganda piece for against interracial marriage during the Elizabethan age, is something that I personally never would have thought about, but something that David clearly has a lot of knowledge and insight to bring because he's lived with this piece for longer. So the fact that we're able to give these artists a chance to voice something that maybe many people don't think about, but yet we as artists are actively digging into these pieces, and now general audiences or other artists who have never heard of a piece like Pipeline or something like that, or the fact that we get to dive into it and give some analysis, then gives other people the chance to go back to their friend group and go, hey, I watched this really cool video where they talked about this. Because that's what I do. Like, I oftentimes will watch a video about the background of a MCU comic book that's now being adapted into a movie. Then I go talk to my dad who knows nothing about it. Then I sound like the expert. So we're giving artists and audiences a chance to sound like the expert, because we are giving them some great, valuable insights into the pieces that, as Ryan said, I don't think we get that just because oftentimes when you're doing a review, there is a certain word limit you can do, or there's a time crunch that you're trying to meet. But the fact that we have openly just said, nope, if our reviews go 2 hours, so be it. Mac will edit the 2-hour video, that type of thing there. I mean, we try to keep it under 2 hours for Mac's sanity.
Usually 2 hours is enough. We can still be long form in 2 hours. That is long form.
Exactly. So
if I can respond to just like 2 things you've popped up, Mac, just really quickly too. Like, I also have friends, like shout out to Katie McMillan, who I just did Flash with in Calgary. She's a Calgary-based artist. She's done a lot of shows with Theatre Calgary, some upcoming. Love you, Katie. And she loves listening to theater podcasts. She listened to Tits and Teeth, which is a Canadian musical theater podcast. Great and then podcast. She caught up to that, and she's like, I need, new podcast content. So I just kind of shouted out Cup of Hemlock, what have you. And she, while we were in rehearsals for Flash, started listening to the Cup. And I was like, oh, but she was so invested. And because all the things we're saying, and her being an artist, and her brain is magical, like Katie McMillan's brain, like, she is so committed and passionate about what she does. And that there's always something cooking behind that skull of hers. And that's the first thing she said too, of like, I wouldn't even think to talk about these pieces the way that other people have talked about them. And also she's like, you talking about Anne Juliet, me being in Calgary, I didn't have a chance to see it, but the discussion that was had on the show, I felt like I was in the room a little bit, or I got to get in on what everyone was talking about. So I think that is another sort of happenstance community builder right there, is that some people don't have the opportunity to see these pieces, and they can kind of live vicariously through how they're chatted about. And just one other thing to talk about too, art is smart and art is hard. And I think if you are not in the industry, a lot of people think this job is easy. They think anyone can do it. And they think that, especially a lot of actors get really bad raps of just phoning it in and, it's such an easy craft. No, it is incredibly hard. It is emotional. It is vulnerable. And it's the fact that we, as the Cup, and even just as the industry at large, we have to have discussions. We have to have discussions about story, about storytelling, about humans, about emotions, otherwise our jobs will not be what they are, will not be effective. And I think I love what we've done too with the Cup and giving the art that agency bump as well, because I think so often everyone sees this craft as easy, and it's really not. Like, it's incredibly hard. And so, but if you do talk things out and create a community, it does make pieces stronger and easier to tap into. So that's
well said. All right. Well, Jill, you kind of sort of alluded to this in your answer for this past question, but let's dive in deeper. So, with the world of theater reopening, our reviewing content has begun to evolve. We now feature reviews of pre-recorded pro shop performances, coverage of new/live performances, and we just recently experimented with our review roundup format with the Toronto Fringe Festival, where we covered 23 shows in 2 hours. Woo! That the adventure on that one. So how do we feel these different review styles differ from one another? Do we foresee one of these formats becoming a more dominant style for us in the future as more live theater opportunities return and open for us? Mm-hmm. So, Jill, do you want to add anything on to something you were already kind of talking about in the last question?
Yeah, I really hope it doesn't go away, because I love the fact that, when live theater became a thing again, we weren't like, okay, great, now we're pivoting to just going out to see shows and just talking about what, Soul Pepper, Crow's Factory, and any tangible theater company is doing. We still go back and review, oh, hey, this thing came up on Broadway HD. Let's talk about this thing that happened in 2004 or something, right? Or, hey, this TikTok musical popped up. Let's talk about that. And I think also it kind of going back to the agency of arts is it's solidifying that art can exist. And especially in the exponentially digitized world we live in, especially post-pandemic, where digitized was the only element we had for a while, art can exist in many different facets and many different styles. And so it's lovely that we have like neighborhood on our feet art, but it doesn't mean that we can shelve the digital, or we should shelve the digital books now, So I kind of hope we do this hodgepodge smorgasbord review style. I think that also I bring up quilt imagery a lot in our episodes. And I think that's another really unique facet of this company is we consist of various different types of materials and color patches that make what the Cup of Hemlock quilt is. And I think the style of show that we review is a testament to that too. So I hope it doesn't go away. Now I imagine that we will continue to have more live theater or in IRL sort of instances to review, and rightfully so, to augment that side of the craft again now that theaters are reopened. But I also like to peek behind the curtain wise. The three of us are very busy in our other veins of the industry, that it helps to have online content or content that is easy accessible at any time, that we can sort of record episodes and keep them holstered and released too, so that our viewers and audiences are never without some sort of fruitful discussion, whether that be something that's happening locally or, in Toronto now, or the, production of Julie that's on National Theatre that Ryan and I are probably going to review soon and keep holstered for a later date. Like, it's happy convenience, I guess. Yeah. And then I think just to talk to like the review roundup that we did with Fringe, I thought that was a super cool sort of like on your feet, go. We only have this amount of time. Let's chat. And again, it brought people into the room that couldn't have seen Fringe, or it's a wonderful springboard for folks that were in Fringe and workshopping new works. Now they have a little tidbit of dialogue to kind of add for grants, etc., etc. So Fringe roundup or any type of like festival roundup, I think that would be something definitely to keep as a flavor.
Absolutely. It could be an annual thing.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. So yeah, I look forward to us keep sewing different types of patches onto our cup quilt.
Yeah.
Stepping off the soapbox again. And just to say, Mac did have an audio glitch a couple paces back. So maybe this video again will be viewed by a lot of people because we had a tech glitch. Sorry, that's been on the mind too.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, I mean, I'll say like with this question, I mean, it was great kind of going through our different formats and going like with our classic pro shot reviews that we do. It's much more of a reflect piece where we kind of get to look back at past productions that have already closed that don't need marketing or pushing, it's just, hey, let's talk about Helen McCrory in Medea, where she sadly passed, the production's closed. But hey, let's go back and look at this production from the mid 2010s and see how it shapes up. Like we did that with Antigone, where we were able to go back and look at a piece that featured two Doctor Who's before they were Doctor Who, and kind of go into the look of that and go, how does this piece hold up nowadays? And there's some pieces that we come out going, yeah, maybe doesn't hold up. Of course, maybe the direction wasn't quite what we needed to be from our 2022 perspective. But then there's sometimes where you come out of a piece going, wow, that piece still has its hold on us. It still is saying something after all these years. Like when we did Dominic Morisseau's Pipeline, which was recorded in the mid 2010s, and then watching it now in 2020, when we watched it in 2021, I believe is when we did that review. But just being able to go back at that and go, okay, wow, this piece still resonates today. Even something like Showboat, a piece from the mid-aughts, which was an opera company's production of a piece that was created almost 100 years before that. And being able to go back and really reflect on that piece and go, oh, wow. A lot of us came in, me especially, going, I don't know if this musical still stands or has its place, but I came into that going, wow, okay. There actually is something here. There actually is something in this piece that is worth the analysis, that is worth the time and energy. So I think that's something that's really special about the pro shot reviews that we do. Then we have our live, upfront, catch it in the moment reviews that we did with some of the pieces we've been invited to, like Jill and I going to see that wonderful Transcendence piece, Grim Night. That was a lot of fun. That was something that was right away very unique, and allowed us to make some wonderful connections with some artists there. That was really a great opportunity. Same thing with the wonderful piece. I'm totally blanking on the name right now. I apologize. All about The Office. Ryan, you and I went and saw it.
Oh, The Huns. Yeah, that was
The
great.
Huns. The Huns, which is a piece that I probably never would have heard of until we were invited to see it. And I came out just going, oh my goodness, what a fantastic piece. So I think that's something that's really great about what we've been able to do, is because, to be honest, we're not being invited to Mervis shows or Stratford shows or
We're still reviewing Mervis shows, #AnneJuliet, but no,
we are still reviewing them. We're not being invited to them. But the fact that the people who are inviting us are people who are like us, who are smaller, just getting their footholds in the world of the Toronto art community. So the fact that we're able to give voice to these productions that probably would go unnoticed or wouldn't garner as much attention broader. So the fact that we're able to give just a small tidbit, no, it can be
Timbit because we're Canadian.
True. To these pieces, and that's just
not sponsored
for grants that they can just use for their own benefit, or just enjoy the fact that, hey, somebody came and spoke about our piece. Because I know I like when people comment on our thing saying, hey, watched your piece, love what you did, right? Like, I thoroughly enjoyed that. So I think that's something that's great about our live pieces, is that the people that we're getting a chance to highlight are people who are searching for that too. Like even having somebody like Anthony all the way down in New York reach out to us and go, hey, I have a play that is off Broadway. It's off Broadway. I'm not sure which one it was, but it's small, it's intimate. Like it's not going to be big, but I love just to be able to be featured and talk about my work and just get the word out there in any way, shape, by form I can, which is that true guerrilla art. Like guerrilla warfare art style that so many indie artists do. And so the fact that we're able to be part of that, I think, is something really special that our live content format provides. And then, of course, we have the Roundup review. That's the newest venture we just did that, as I said, I think it will become an annual thing as long as we run, which will, because Fringe comes every year. I mean, maybe one day we'll fly and do Edinburgh Fringe. We'll do a special trip somewhere and do something, or go somewhere else to Ottawa or Calgary or down to the States or something. Who knows? Maybe we'll one day win the lottery and be able to go around the world and do all these different Fringe festivals. Put it out there in the world. Win us the lottery. So there we go. So yeah, I think that's what's great about that, is it gives us an opportunity to kind of, in say max sanity, because trying to do 23 mini review edits would have totally fried Mac's brain. The fact that we were able to come up with a organic way of bringing this piece together, still giving the companies and the artists a chance to be shouted out and recognized, is really important. And it all came about because we were invited to see Wanda at Fringe, and we went, we're not going to have time to get this out before the end of the run for Wanda. So let's do something special, where Jill and Ryan came up with the great concept of, let's do a review roundup where we highlight all the shows that we see, because we all were going to go see several shows. So let's do something where we highlight everybody and give a chance to really speak on each piece on their own. So I think that's something that's really great about that concept, is that, and it's something that will be used probably more frequently as more festivals arise for opportunities. So yeah, Ryan?
Yeah, we've both said so many interesting things, but I think there's still a couple things I'd like to add. So A shocker. So, first of all, I think, part of the phrasing of this question was about, is one going to take precedence over the other? And I feel like that has maybe started to happen already, whether we like it or not, because as we've done more of these, we have been keep getting invited to other shows. And because ones that we're invited to that are live, that, we want to make sure we get our reviews out during the runs of the shows, those have to take precedence. We still do, like Jill said, where we take pre-recorded things and record them and put them in a treasure trove for when we have a blank space on our release schedule. But yeah, whereas we used to only do that, now those are getting very much relegated to that position. And part of me thinks that is still a bit of a shame. And I maybe think, skipping ahead to the next 100 episodes, maybe we'll find a better way to balance the two. Spoilers. And part of my reason for thinking that is because just due to the quick turnaround nature and expediency of how we approach the live performances, for the most part, it's just the three of us doing them. Two of us will go see the show, and we do it in our duet review format, where it's only two speakers as opposed to the whole 4-person panel that we become accustomed to with the pro shot reviews. And as much as I love the three of us, you two especially, I feel like we are missing out on a bit of a diversity of perspectives and opinion. Part of that dialogue that I just said, I think is so great. We still bring the dialogue because two people will have different perspectives on the piece. But I really do love how our pre-recorded panels are set up in a way that do bring people from all over the community and bring their different perspectives, people in different roles, different types of artists or enthusiasts or scholars. That's the mandate. So yeah, I would to see, I don't want, pre-recorded doesn't necessarily have to, get pushed aside for the new ones, or it shouldn't even be an even balance. And as more and more shows are opening up, I think there is more of a demand for reviews of the new things. But I feel like there's maybe still ways that we can tweak the balance of these to bring in those perspectives and service our community on that end more. Aside from that, to talk about the roundup for Fringe in particular, Fringe reviewing is in a difficult state right now because, there used to be a very well-known blog here in Toronto that no longer exists called Mooney on Theatre that would send out a fleet of, usually, I don't know if they were volunteers or just like kind of, paid per review people to just go out and make sure they covered every single Fringe show, that by day 3 of the festival, every single show had one review. And that doesn't exist anymore. I actually remember standing in line at a Fringe show and hearing people talk about how, they don't know what to see. They miss Mooney, how there isn't like a big, way that you can just type in any single show into Google and know, okay, what did Mooney think about it? And Mooney, it wasn't Megan Mooney herself who was going out to review everything, and also had problems with Mooney in particular, not as an institution. I thought they did great work, but that fleet of reviewers, many of whom weren't very experienced, you didn't always get good quality reviews, and it wasn't always this like even across the board. And if one person didn't like a show and that's the only review they get, that could kill that show. Like we talk about how people like Ben Brantley in New York are so powerful that they can break a show with their opinion. But honestly, I feel like you don't even have to be Ben Brantley for that. If you're just the one person who happens to review a show and you actually just don't know what you're talking about, like this is what I was talking about before, about the authoritative monologue that is most reviewing. So Mooney doesn't exist anymore. That's beside the point. That and sort of the quirks of, what could be problematic about their form of reviewing. But at the end of the day, we don't have anything taking its place. There is not a lot of shows for Fringe probably didn't even get reviewed at all. And I tried to follow usually after the festival ended or after I'd seen certain shows, like who did do the coverage. And we had some, like Intermission Magazine had like their kind of young reviewer unit that reviewed a lot of things. Stageworthy Podcast did a few roundtables with artists, but not really reviews. It's not really their main thing. And I learned about a lot of new blogs that I never realized existed, or maybe, I don't know if they're even new blogs or if they just are now filling in the void. Glenn Sumi at Now also was one of the like main people reviewing things. So there was some coverage in the Fringe community, but nothing like of the breadth. And even our 23 reviews, like which to us feels like so much, is really just scratching the surface. There's so many shows. And for the most part, there were a couple shows that did invite us specifically. But aside from that, we just kind of went with our own interests. What do we personally want to see? And we'll just make a point of reviewing those. So I think we did the best we could with the limited resources we have, but I still feel like a lot is being lost around the margins. And something else I'll also say is, I don't take issue with the fact that we didn't get our Fringe roundup out, during the festival. That actually wasn't the point, was to do it after so we can make sure we've seen everything we're going to see and then talk about it. And I'm a big proponent of the fact, I've sort of talked about this already, that, criticism has more than just its mercantile function. It's not just, generating advertisement to see this show. Like, people might say, like, oh, what's the point of doing all of these reviews after it's too late to see the shows? But I think we are, documenting these shows for theater history. We are recording this moment for posterity, and the artists probably care about what people thought of their shows, even if it isn't about generating word of mouth. So I'm like perfectly fine with that being the way we approach this format. But the one thing that I maybe do take a little issue with, and this isn't like any fault of ours, we did what we could, and I want us to keep doing it year after year. But I do feel like those three pillars of what I just said is so great about what we do. I honestly think we failed to do those three things, or at least two of the three, in the Roundup format, because for the most part, each show was reviewed by just one of us. There were a couple that two of us saw that we were able to do the dialogue for, but they kind of did just become short form, not long form, but short form monologues about this is what I thought. And to me, it is what it is. It's the way we approached it. But I think that was a bit of a shame, since it kind of detracts from the main things we do, that we give it the length and the detail. And yeah, we really couldn't give it the length in that format. And
evolve for next year.
Yeah, it's just things I've been thinking about since, because I had so many thoughts about so many of those shows that I just didn't have the time to get into, because we had so many to cover. We had to move on. And yeah, at the end of the day, though, we did still, for the most part, get to talk dramaturgy about them, which I think does kind of make it, this is still the good thing that we do. But yeah, it's just notes to self, and I'm thinking, how can we improve this for next year? What might be the way we can continue to do this? And maybe if we start getting more of a budget by next year, we can send out more of a fleet that can cover a wider array, and maybe more people can see. We'll see. But with the resources we have, I think we did something very good that did service the community, and it's been doing pretty well, that video. So I think a lot of people from the community were very happy that we did it, and we got some lovely comments on it too.
We did. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. So now we're going to talk about a section of the Cup that we've hinted at, but we haven't given its proper due. So apart from our review panels, another main vein of the Cup is our artist interviews. What are your thoughts on that branch of the company? Jill or Ryan, who wants to take this one first? Because you both kind of have...
Do you want to take a stab at it first, Matt? Because I feel like of the three of us, that this is a vein that you haven't hosted as often as Ryan and I. So let's get your perspective on it.
Yeah, you also haven't started a question in a while.
Yes.
Sure. So I mean, for me, this concept came up during one of our weekend company meetings back in the old team format when we were still in the midst of the pandemic, and either Ryan or Jill, or maybe both of you, I can't remember which one of you started, but one of you proposed the concept. And then from there, it's kind of been a great kind of opportunity, because that branch has opened doors to some fantastic conversations with some incredible artists, from Bridget to Autumn to ML Rio to Andre Sills to people who maybe wouldn't even know, who like general audiences wouldn't know, like Mateo, who Ryan interviewed all about his play. So that was really nice. So I think what's so great about these intimate and informal discussions is that they've given artists a great opportunity to not just speak about one of their projects that they're doing, which is something that what a lot of artist interviews become, which is, hey, Jill, you're working on the Merry Wives of Windsor, so let's interview you about the Merry Wives of Windsor. And then that's all you talk about. A lot of our review or interviews that we've done are not just, hey, tell us about the piece you're working on, because it happened during the pandemic when pieces weren't happening. It became more about, let's talk about you and and the things that have influenced you in your work. And I think a great example of that is our 2-part Michael Roth interview that we did, which was hosted by me.
You and Michael in a room together, no wonder it ended up as 2 hours.
Right? Exactly.
2 parts.
It was 4 hours.
Yes, right, yeah.
So, but that piece there, it was a great example of what the interview format can do, which is, hey, let's talk about you and give you a chance to and just to pick your brain. Like the fact that Michael was able to talk so much about just how going to theater in New York and not going to see the big Broadway show, but going to see like a little off-Broadway piece that opened his mind to music, and then his ability to then talk about the different ways that he wrote his music, like when he did The Tempest and 12th Night, and then his piano was right there. You can just start hammering it out on the keys, And then like you go to somebody like Bridget, who talks about just what it's like to not only be a mom, a working mom in theater, but then also what it's like to be a mature woman in theater, and just what does that toll take on someone when there aren't as many roles designed like the Merry Wives of Windsor to give these fantastic actresses a chance to perform, because they're in that in-between era where they're not quite old enough yet to be playing some of the Grand Dame characters, like what's her name from Ernest? Lady Bracknell, but they're not quite young enough anymore to play the ingenue or the young mom in a play, like they're kind of like Bridget was in that in-between era. So the fact she was able to talk about and really bring that issue to light is something really special. So I think that's something really wonderful about the interview format. It gives the artist a chance. I mean, sometimes we do have pieces like Antony's where we're talking really specifically about a piece, but I mean, Ryan and Jill, who hosted a lot of these interviews, have done a really good job of saying, yes, we'll talk about your piece, but we're also going to try and really highlight and get more about you and not just your project. And I think that's something that's really beautiful about our interview branch, is that it's giving artists a chance to highlight themselves versus just the given project of the day that they're marketing for,
Because you're a human first before the artist.
Exactly. Jill.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that. Sure. Reiterating everything you said again, Mac, and also like I love people. I'm a very big people person. I'm an extrovert. I just love humans, getting to know humans, where they came from, why they are the way they are. I think that's part of like my sciencey psychology side of my brain, fascination side of my brain too. And so, yeah, I think it was kind of a chicken and an egg situation between me and Ryan when it came to proposing the interview format, because again, just sharing from my end, I know there was part of me that was itching for community, for artistic community, and just being in rooms with artists that you may not have met, but the only reason why you're meeting is because you're plopped in the same cast with one another. Well, we didn't have the opportunity to have casts, right? Where you're meeting new people and working with new people. And so I was like, why don't we just make those conversations happen, right? And it did kind of very much become like, I would like to know your blueprint as a human. And it starts with like, how did you get into theater? So, we are kind of diving right into theatrics per se, but it's cool to hear and see, like, for example, my interview with Corey Tasmania, that was such an awesome interview because I know Corey grew up in New York, and she's now living in Toronto and doing so many things from like intimacy, direction to acting, voice acting, etc. But I love to hear that like both her parents were in the arts too. And then, or I believe, no, definitely like her dad was, and her mom, she just, where she came from basically as a person in her trajectory is what I'm getting at here. And, and being an artist too, like your every single day of your life as a human can kind of influence or inspire your work as an actor. That's just kind of how the craft works. The craft encourages you to explore different facets of humanity, of self, and of those around you. And I love that that's kind of what our artist interviews do. And yeah, and then you learn things about people that you thought you knew quite a lot about, and you explore areas of someone's life through like a tangent on a question that you didn't think would come up too. So yeah, I could go on and on talking about interviews. I will say again, it's like one of my favorite veins of what we've done with the company, and I look forward to interviewing more folks.
Yeah. Ryan, take us out.
Yeah. So I think thinking back as I was meditating on this question before we started recording, the very first interview we did, which I hosted, was with Max Ackerman and Josh Sidlowski when they had just started their new company, Dandelion Theater. Yeah. And they had just done like a few Zoom kind of workshop-y things. They had other productions coming up in the works. And we were still, Mark 1 Cup of Hemlock at this point, intending to be a new indie company in the community. And I looked at these two guys, Max, who I also knew, like we did the Paprika Festival together many moons ago, and Jill, you went to school with both of them. But like I was looking at this new company that they were starting, I'm like, this sounds like it could be very similar to Cup of Hemlock. And, the lizard part of the brain instantly looks at that and says, oh no, competition, bad. But then after a shush lizard brain, it just took a breath and thought, well, this is our community. We are making shows, they're making shows. We're starting from similar places with similar types of personnel. We shouldn't be enemies. We're doing the same thing.
We're all in this together.
No room for competition here. These are not enemies, they're colleagues. So I wanted them to be the first interview on the docket to kind of, not that we needed to make peace with them because there was no actual feud, but to kind of show that like we are in this together, we're supporting each other, we're all in this strange pandemic trying to make something new and not really knowing how to go about it. And I thought that was like a lovely kickoff point to how we started this whole interview initiative as something that, because it came out like after episode 5 of the first set of Stratford reviews. I think we did. Yeah, was it Love's Labor's Lost was either right before or after that interview.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and I've been approaching a lot of these interviews from that same place. Now that we're not actually a theater company ourselves anymore, we don't have to have the lizard brain reaction of gasp competition. but I do kind of still think of like, these are colleagues, we're theater people, they're theater people, let's get in a room together and just talk about the craft. And like, ML Rio interview, which I shouted out already as one of my favorite episodes, that was another one that like I had in my head of like, when will I get an opportunity to talk to this person? But I have a talk show now, something I didn't have a few years earlier when I read the book for the first time.
Yeah.
But I was just like, well, now I actually have an excuse if I wanted to just reach out to this person and talk about which editions of Shakespeare she likes referencing when she's writing her novel about Shakespeare. So just like things like that I would have never had the opportunity before, people you wouldn't meet. Like part of our mandate has the from all over the map attached to it. And that is a big part of what the pandemic has done that I don't think we would have thought to do naturally, of bring people from all over, anybody from any place or country, as long as they have an internet connection, can be on this show and talk to us. And something else that I also thought about while thinking about this question was how most podcasts, and I know we're going to talk about the mechanics of podcasting in another question very soon, but most theater podcasts are interview based. It's kind of rare to have review podcasts, which was the kind of new thing we were starting at first. But like, the very big one in our community, Stageworthy, is pretty much all interviews. Tits and Teeth also, which Jill, you mentioned earlier, is for the most part very interview based. Arthursations, which our new friend and colleague Bree Clark does, is also, it's interview based because the podcast format is kind of very conducive to just come on my show and I'll talk about you and we'll talk to each other. It's great. And when we started doing that, we kind of took the review premise that we'd already started and said, okay, but this can also be a review thing. And I think these two facets of the company complement each other very well.
Absolutely,
and I think there's no greater evidence of that than the one that's almost very recent ago, episodes we just did. I think, we did our Fringe Roundup where we talked about the show Wanda. Jill and I both saw it, we reviewed it. And then the next episode we released after that was me interviewing some of the crew from Wanda to take this conversation that was started in the sadly short form format of the Fringe Roundup and say, okay, but let's go deeper. Let's talk to you. Let's actually see what else there is to say about this. Because reviews are reception and interviews refer to production. It's actually looking at the people behind the work. And we can only get so far from one or the other, but having the two together and the rare occasion where we're actually able to engage with both on the same piece or with the same artist, I think that like just fireworks magic. It's great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Love that. Love that. Well, Ryan, you alluded to our next question already, which is, what would you say are the benefits of the YouTube and podcast as media for discourse about theater? Ryan, since you already alluded to this, let's let you kick this one off.
Okay. Well, first of all, there's a joke like R.I.P. Bob Saget. Weird way to start the answer to this, but like Bob Saget, I don't know if any of you know this, had a podcast in the last few years of his life.
I did not know this.
Yeah. The old Danny Tanner himself had the Bob Saget podcast, I think it was called, where where he would basically just get on a Zoom call. Again, it was pandemic time, with some of his like actor and comedian friends and just talk about I didn't watch a lot of or listen to because of the podcast. I didn't listen to a lot of episodes of it, but he had like Jason Alexander on one, and it was just like, okay, two people from shows I watched in the 90s talking in a podcast like that. But I bring up Bob Saget specifically because I don't know if this was a thing in every episode because I didn't tune into a lot of them, but in certainly the episodes that I did tune into of this podcast, in the intro, he said, yes, I have a podcast because literally everyone on Earth has a podcast. Maybe even you listening to this have a podcast. Statistically, you probably do. And I listened to this I do have a podcast. Thank you, Bob Saget. I feel seen. So why do I bring this up? Because, yes, it is pretty ubiquitous now that anybody who has any ideas or thoughts or opinions about anything, which is literally everyone, either does have a podcast or maybe has aspirations to make a podcast, or at least in theory could make a podcast about whatever it is they're interested in. And, I hinted at earlier how we don't necessarily have the biggest audience for this, but the audience we do have seems quite into it, as modest and small as they are. And this is actually something, there's a really interesting podcast I was listening to not too long ago. It's actually by someone located in Toronto. Her name is Olivia Trono. And her podcast, she's a recent master's graduate at Toronto Metropolitan University. And her podcast is titled My Master's Thesis, but it's a podcast about podcasts. And this is what she did for her TMU master's thesis in, I believe, media and communication studies. Instead of writing a thesis like, every grad student before her has done, she did her thesis in the form of a podcast. And in a media studies program, that's an interesting idea. And it was specifically...
I think it's great.
Yeah, I would encourage a shout out to this podcast that people check out and listen to. I thought it was really interesting. And something I remember her saying in that, or I don't remember if she said it or one of the guests she had on it, because that was also part of how do you do a thesis as a podcast? Well, you do it in the form of podcast, which means having guests on, other podcasters to talk about that kind of thing. And something that it was either her or one of her guests mentioned, or maybe some of the other literature that she cited, it's been a while now, I don't specifically remember the details, but they talked about how something unique about podcasts is that because there's so many of them, and they're very granular niche on very specific topics, pretty much everyone in the world can find one that is exactly what they want to listen to. That is just this feels like it was made just for me, because who else is having these thoughts or talking about this? Yet there's so many of them, you're bound to find one that is exactly what you want. It's not like, old media formats where just yep, these are all the books that come out this year. These are all the newspapers that you can have access to. This is what's on TV. And maybe you're into it, maybe you're not. But there's just such a breadth of things out there that, it doesn't matter that most podcasts don't have big audiences like ours, but the audiences that do gravitate towards it feels like this was made just for me.
Yeah.
And so the kind of work we're doing, servicing this local theater community, and not just talk about local works, but talk about works all over, I think we are cultivating something that really, I hope certain people do tune into and be like, wow, this is exactly what I've been looking for. And, if we talk about media specificity, it's interesting. It took us a while to, I think, even start conceptualizing the show as a podcast, because first we were doing it just on YouTube, and then eventually we kind of remastered the old episodes as just audio and put them on Anchor, and then started releasing the new episodes accordingly on Anchor when they come out, the YouTube versions. And I guess it's sort of like a ontological question of what constitutes a podcast. Does it have to be audio only on one of these specific platforms that makes it a podcast? Because all along I sort of was thinking about even the versions on YouTube, even the versions that are still on YouTube, I think of as podcasts, because I'm pretty sure nobody's staring at our faces for 2 hours not doing anything.
They are. We have beautiful faces.
Maybe they are. Well, you two do. But
Ryan,
it's self-deprecating.
You very much do.
That's nice of you to say. But no, I feel like it would be weird if someone just sits at their computer and watches this for hours on end. For the most part, you put it on in the background. You're doing something else. You're either cooking or writing something, and you just listen to it. And that's how most people, or maybe now that we're on those other podcast platforms, you listen to it during your commute. So regardless of, whether or not we are on YouTube or on the other stuff, I always felt like we were podcast-like. Now, but we also have interesting visuals. We talk about our cups, which is something that maybe gets lost, and our ensembles. And, ever since we've been doing new live shows, we've started putting up fun visuals for the spoilers that are completely lost to the podcast audience. So there's interesting ways that we sort of straddle two media here. But at the end of the day, I think both YouTube and podcasts are very good, and they are algorithm based at targeting the audience that does want to see them, just based on other things you watch and listen to. And I think a lot of our audience probably comes from that type of possibly insidious, depending on how you look at the algorithm, curation. I've talked a lot for a while, so someone else can pick up here.
Jill?
I think, again, this is a common thread, y'all. We're all spewing out the correct answer and then just piggybacking and adding a little bit more. So to add frosting onto Ryan's already beautifully made cake on this answer. Yeah, I think at podcasts, you hit the nail on the head there, Ryan, of there is a podcast for every single human out there. Because I think I've always had this thing with podcasts too, as someone who I always have so many thoughts on so many things, not just the arts, but just in general. I feel like my brain is always turning, and I gravitate to podcasts when I either need to turn my brain off and just have someone fill my brain with other facts, or I'll be listening and I'll be like, oh my goodness, I have that exact same thought, or like that person is saying what I said. So I think too, podcasts just in general are a way of human thoughts that would have no other sort of cavern to fit into rather than just staying in your brain. And like, and then just specifically thinking about our podcast in general, like all of the dramaturgical deep dives and going further and bringing up a certain color that was noticed on this costume. It's like, that's a fleeting thought that you would have going to see a show, and you might share it with like your partner or someone, but you also might not. But allowing there to be a medium, a platform that its survival is just dependent on conversation and thought puking, basically. That's what a podcast is. Yeah, I think it's wonderful for specifically this type of conversation where, and again, with art being so unique and different, and no person is going to have the same exact thought about any piece of art ever. That's what makes art wonderful, beautiful, unique to each person, right? You're not going to carbon copy, like go out of seeing a show and carbon copy, say the exact same words at the exact same time about the exact same moment. And so I love, like podcast platforms, and then YouTube basically for the most part acting like a podcast with featured video if you want. It's just kind of like a messy playground of spew what you want to spew. Literally what I'm doing right now, right? Sometimes unscripted, sometimes scripted, sometimes weaving back and forth between both. And like, isn't that live performance? You know? And so I think it's very meta. And I think it's, and breaking away, we've had to kind of break away from the rigidness, the tradition of what is theater, what is film, when the past couple of years, those have come together and merged and married in some instances. Theaters become film, films kind of become our theater. And so, I think this platform makes a whole heap of sense. I'm going to stop podcast spewing and send it to you, Mac.
I mean, so this question harkened me back to something we talked about in our musical roundtable that we did, which was, why is it that musicals are more universally known and attracting general audiences compared to plays? And I think what we are doing is helping to bridge that gap where audiences know Hamilton because they all can go buy the album. Now, in the world, there are people, I mean, Stratford has their own feed, and I'm guaranteed there are many people who have watched their production of King Lear starring Comfior. But there was never really, until we came along, because I couldn't really find anything before us, that did a review / textual deep dive into the piece. So the fact that we're able to harness that uniqueness and then bridge the gap and slowly but surely start to give, particularly plays, because we haven't really talked about musicals. We've done a few, but I haven't really highlighted them like, say, on my other podcast that I do. But like, we've started to work to bridge the gap and make these particular productions and things that are accessible, because a lot of our pieces can be seen whether through Broadway HD, National Theatre, Stratford, trying to think of some of the other ones we've streamed on. There's a few different other ones. Anyway, so the fact that like these productions are available to watch, so it's not like they're not accessible. It's just people really don't know about them or haven't really sought them out in the same way as they would a album from Lin-Manuel Miranda, you know? So the fact that what we are doing is we are giving a voice to art that maybe sometimes doesn't get as much connection, just because seeing a play, as I think Jill or whoever was doing the roundtable talked about when we did this question, is a musical you can take anywhere with you on the road. Seeing Comfior in King Lear is very specific to, you have to sit down on your couch or lie in your bed or on your laptop and watch that production in order to understand what we're talking about. But we've been able to elevate that to, hey, you can take us on the road with you. And Jill, as you mentioned with Katie in your rehearsal, she goes, I may not be able to see Anne Juliet, but hey, I can still feel like I've been at least
in the room where it happens.
Exactly.
Hashtag Hamilton.
There you go. I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll actually do a review of Hamilton Pro Shot at some point.
Episode
We've talked
200.
Episode 200. Setting the goal now, everybody.
Can we talk about, like, what's it mean to talk about Hamilton so many years after that it was
True. Yes. So, I mean, there we go. We've set it out. That's the flag we're going to get to. So, but yeah, I think is what's unique about our work with our YouTube channel and our podcast is that we give the opportunity for some pieces that may not have been able to gain wider recognition because they're not as knownly accessible to audiences because nobody really talks about them. Like, it wasn't until, I mean, I knew about the Pro Shots of Stratford because I heard about them and I went and saw them. But my parents and some of my other family and friends who have watched our work go, I didn't know I could go watch that. Great. It's only like $5 a month for Stratfest at home. Sign me up. There's a lot of good content. National Theater. Who doesn't want to go watch Helen Mirren do a play or Helen McCrory or
Make Helen do a one-man show.
Exactly. That may be coming up. There we go. So there you go. So that's something there where it's like, hey, these pieces exist. So let's give them a voice. And that's something I think we've done with our particular unique brand of work is that we've been able to start slowly but surely building the bridge to fill the gap for pieces that don't get as much recognition and love as they should. Because, you know, I mean, I just watched the latest Tony Awards. The plays got talked about, but back 30 years ago, they actually performed scenes from those plays at the Tony Awards. Now it's a passing mention of, and this year this play has been nominated, and this play tells the story of Bob and dealing with his family after the mother's death. And here is a short trailer for it. It's like, okay. Used to be that you would get someone like James Earl Jones to come out and perform a scene from Fences at the Tony Awards, you know? Yeah. People would talk about it. But now that's kind of lost. So, because it's like, hey, we got to get to the next musical performance. Love the musicals. Don't get me wrong. I have a whole podcast about them. But I think what we are doing is helping to, as I said, but so actually build the bridge to fill the gap on some of these artistic works that maybe won't be as well known yet. So, you know, there we go. All right, let's just round it, everybody, with our final question of the night, which is, what's next for Cup of Hemlock? What would you like to see us do in the next 100 episodes? Ryan's already laid out the flag of Hamilton Pro Shot review.
Yeah. So, well, I say that kind of in jest, but like honestly,
no,
if we
Ryan's out there now. We're doing
no,
it.
No. I'm not backpedaling by any means. I'm just saying, like, yeah, if we do make it to 200 episodes, that we've laid out all of our thoughts here, I don't think they're going to change majorly in that time. We don't need to do another roundtable like this. So why not? There has, like, I don't know, when the Hamilton film version Pro Shot came out on Disney Plus originally, people, you know, I think there was some talk amongst us like, ooh, should we do it? It's a big thing that will probably generate some views. But at the time I think we were still in the Stratford stuff, or even like just after the Stratford?
We were after Stratford stuff, but as Ryan said, the field has been inundated with Hamilton reviews. Do we have something new to contribute to that? And if we don't, let's let it lie for a bit and we'll come back to it.
Yeah, so I think by the time we eventually get to 200 episodes, maybe enough has simmered that we can kind of look back on it with fresh eyes, and that'll be the time to. But it also, because that is the premier production of Hamilton with its original Broadway cast, like, you know, do we really have, you know, new hot takes to say about Philippa Sue as Eliza? Or like, it's not like when we were at the time, if we were still doing our Shakespeare stuff, it's like, okay, I've seen Lear many times, but how is Colmfior's Lear? Like, you know.
Although I will say, I, you know, don't put me in a cage, but I still have yet to see the Pro Shot Hamilton.
Yeah, so
me too, Jill. I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, none of the three of us have watched it.
Some people would be like, "Oh my gosh, you!" It's like, no.
I think have all three of us.
I've been building a theater community.
All three of us have seen a production of it.
I've seen exactly. So that's something to add too, right?
I have not seen it live.
Oh, you haven't, right? Because you're lukewarm on it, so that'll be an interesting.
Well, spoiler alert, Ryan.
Yeah. So I think that I don't know. We all saw you and I saw different iterations too, and I had an understudy as Alexander Hamilton, who was freaking fantastic. Blaine Krause, shout out. But yeah, anyways, that's a Hamilton.
That's project way down the road.
On the actual Hamilton.
We got another 99 episodes before we talk about this. But Ryan, what other things do you see on our horizon that you'd like us to share?
Like, I don't want to. Yeah, I certainly don't want to dwell on like the, you know, self-constructive criticism here, but I've already kind of gotten into some of the stuff about like, how will we maybe approach the roundup next year that doesn't play into some of the issues that I maybe took with how we handled this year that weren't even really issues. They were just like, this is how we're approaching it. And it was an experiment, the Roundup, but I kind of feel like it did, in a way, undercut what's so great about how we usually approach the work. So thinking through things like that, I do want to make sure that even though the new live performances, as I said, have been very much the three of us reviewing them, I do want to make sure we keep inviting people, not just in the interviews, but also into the reviews, into our network, to make sure that we get to hear many voices that aren't just the three of us, because I think that's a big part of what we do and what makes us special. But aside from those kinds of fairly easy to correct things, I think I am very happy with what we've been doing. I want to keep doing the type of work. We wrote that new mandate a year ago, and I feel pretty much the same way about it now a year later than I did then. And I just like to keep doing what we're doing for as long as we're able to, and maybe we'll be able to get more efficient. Maybe we'll bring some more money in that'll actually allow this process to be facilitated in ways that will ease some of the burden of labor. Maybe we'll expand the team if that's possible. To be determined. But at the end of the day, I think we've built something really special here, and I just want to keep doing it for as long as we can.
Love that. Jill?
Yes, I am very much looking forward to, as things are opening and experiences and opportunities in my life as an actor are blossoming and will continue to blossom. I am back in the craft of meeting new people and being in new cities and doing new shows. So a perfect example of this is I just spent the last couple of weeks when we're recording this in Calgary doing Calgary Fringe. And I met Katie McMillan and Andrea Page, who are Calgary-based artists who went to school or came to Toronto, went to school at Randolph or did some stuff in Toronto, and now we're in Calgary and doing the thing. And so I look forward to maybe interviewing them, getting Katie McMillan on the docket. And I know she's going to be in Jimmy Buffett Margaritaville musical, like I said, Theatre Calgary is doing, directed by Julie Tomeno, music director Chris Sugiuchi, who I've been in Heart House's Rocky Horror with. So circles are starting to orb and meet and blend together again. And I look forward to, from a personal artist point of view too, is meeting these people and hearing their stories and seeing their pathways and bringing them on the show to augment that. So and that's something that will never stop, right? So it's and not only was I in Calgary doing Calgary Fringe, meeting Calgary artists, but also at Calgary Fringe, I met a whole slew of artists that have been doing the entire Canadian Fringe circuit and are going on to Edmonton Fringe and Nanaimo Fringe and Vancouver Fringe, but they're originally Brooklyn artists, or they're originally artists from Victoria. So it's just I feel like the tendrils of community are growing and growing and growing and growing. And I'm getting super jazzed and excited talking about this because, again, I think something that this medium, this digitized forum, has encouraged and opened our eyes to is that theater community can break down borders and barriers, and you can keep in conversation with all of these artists regardless of where you are in the world. And so I look forward to, there was the time when we kind of were trying to figure this out and figure, what can we be doing or what should we be doing? And it's our pool of people that we know is small, or a pool of people that we could tap right now I could tap this person or whatever. But now it's there's a whole pool of folks that I want to get on the show and I want to interview. And we mentioned Brianna Clark, Brianna, if you're listening or watching, I'm going to interview you. We're going to have a discussion. There's lists now, right, of people, and that'll never stop. So the community is ever growing, and I'm so grateful to that and jazzed for that. And so I get what I'm saying now will fit perfectly into the interview vein of the Cup, but also these artists could be panelists too, and should be panelists, right? And we've seen that happen as well too, where it's there's no one spot for you in the Cup, right? And so I look forward to just continuing to grow our community and really hopefully continue to lay down some roots in what we've just chatted about, of how we are a different way of discussing art. Theater enthusiasm is the name of the game, whether we are reviewing you as the artist or we are reviewing an artist's piece. I will say, just as a generic thing of humans, kindness is key, right? And I think that's just an overall, we talk about, there's been healthy debates on the show and there's been opinions had or what have you, but our rooms are always safe spaces. And yeah, I look forward to continuing to see our colleagues and Cup participants thrive and achieve alongside all of the stuff that we're doing as well, right? Yeah. I'm going on a tangent like I always do. Finish it out for us.
Take it away.
All right. I mean, for me, what I would like to see in the next 100 episodes is the return of some of our other programming that's kind of been on a bit of a hiatus, the roundtable discussions. We do have a list of topics that we do want to do. Yeah. So it's one of those things that we just got to get back to it and buckle down and get it organized, So that's something we definitely would love to see come back. I'd love to see us develop our Proudly Present series a bit more of our stage readings and maybe add on a after show discussion. Like we do the reading, but then there's a after show cast discussion about the text where we get more of that our artist dialogue in there. I mean, this can become a pitch session that everybody's getting privy to.
Get in the comments if you like these ideas.
Exactly, behind the curtain there. But yeah, I do think there are some programs that we've done in the past that we've put on hiatus because we were focusing on other things, but I think we can get back to some of our other pieces and reevaluate them and go, hey, this worked when we did it originally. What can we do to bring it back? But hey, get it to evolve into reflecting more of our new mandate, like our Proudly Present series. I also think there are some new shows that we slowly but surely started talking about that we will be potentially looking into producing, something that may take us into a more cinematic realm, shall we say, of theater there. So
we just review the MCU from now on. No.
I mean, I would love to see a Shakespeare MCU. I mean, that does exist. It's called Kill Shakespeare. It's a really great graphic novel series. Highly recommend.
Yeah, there's also the Star Wars one, where it's the Shakespeareanized Star Wars books. Yes. Yeah. So we can just review those from now on. That's what we do.
The Cup of Hemlock Book Club, where we only read plays. I mean, we did have that. It's called Play Book Club.
Yeah, but we don't record those. That's the difference. No, yes, we recorded it once for Merchant of Venice, and I think
that was enough.
Yeah.
But there we go. So yeah, I do think. So I definitely want to see us reevaluate some of our older programming that we put on hiatus and see how we can bring it back, because I do think we had some really good concepts there over the pandemic. That now that we're all back to living our lives out of our condos and apartments, that now it's like, hey, now we got to kind of, we don't have 8 hours every day to kind of be developing pieces. It's kind of, we got to be more judicial in how we do them. So I do think we'll definitely be getting back some of that classic content that you haven't seen in a hot minute, but we'll be upping it for a new evolutionary process, like a Pokemon.
If I could comment on the roundtables in particular, because we had a question about reviews, we had a question about interviews. Why isn't there a question about roundtables on here? Well, the problem is we've only done 2 of them, and like our review panels are sort of very much formatted like roundtables, just on a specific show. And what distinguishes the roundtable format as we defined it is that it's more about us interrogating a topic than a specific show. The interviews are for an artist's work, the reviews are for a specific production, and the roundtables are for let's get deep into the philosophical nitty-gritty of a topic. And part of the reason why I think we haven't done one in a while, or why we have a big growing list of topics that we never seem to get around to produce, is because with those we tend to really want to emphasize people with certain degrees of expertise on the topic, and those tend to be scheduling nightmares, as we found to peek behind the curtain. Because with the reviews, like we talked about the standby format, that if someone says at the last minute, sorry, I can't do it, no worries, one of us will step up and be on, because that's just, we're getting 4 people into a room to talk about a show. But when we kind of do the roundtable format, we really do want to make sure these are 4 or
6
5
people we have to schedule.
Yeah, 6 people we have to schedule who are very important to bring on, because they are some kind of authority on the subject, or they have a unique perspective that we really want to hear from. And to then lose one of them at the last minute is like, do we reschedule this to try to accommodate them because we really want their perspective on it, but then we have to accommodate everyone else too. So as much as we would like to do them, and I agree, I would like to see more of them in the future too, we do have a growing list of topics. Curb your enthusiasm on that one, because it might take a while before we get one on board.
Once again, we are revolving the programming. Who knows? Maybe we'll come back to roundtables with a new way of programming them, but that's going to be the joy of the next 100 episodes, is taking some of our classic content and, just like how there's like a soft reboot of a show every once in a blue moon. I mean, Riverdale does that every season. It was horrible.
The amount of outskirt media plop-ins that are in this episode.
Yeah.
There's
want
all
a
Gets
list.
podcast made an appearance of
Yeah.
all things.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely think I definitely say stay tuned for the next 100 because we got some new projects coming. We got some remastered or evolved older projects coming back that we're going to be reevaluating and, you know, trying to see if they can come back. And if not, then we try it one more time. And then it's like, okay, we tried, we gave it our best shot, everybody. Sorry, we're moving on to the next thing.
I will say also to the We Are Proud to Present Cup of Hemlock, not the play. We Are Proud to Present.
Yeah, I know. It's like, wait.
Proudly presents.
The Cup of Hemlock proudly presents and the COH shorts.
Mm-hmm.
While those have certainly been on a bit of a hiatus since we did renegotiate our priorities away from We Are a Theater Company that also does a podcast to We Are a Podcast that maybe occasionally does these sort of Zoom reading plays things. I will say there will be a Christmas short this year. We've done it for the past 2 years. The resident Jew of the company has directed both of the past ones. I will make it my mission to make sure that every year, as long as we are doing this thing, there will be a Christmas short every season.
You are
Stay tuned to find out which one it is.
dramaturgical Santa Claus, Ryan.
Yes. Ho, ho, ho.
Oh.
Show.
Exactly. There we go. All right, everybody. And that is it for episode 100. 2 hours later, we have officially come through. Now we want to hear from you. So leave us a comment. Let us know what you want us to do in the next 100 episodes. Do you want to see some live Instagram stuff? Do you want to see us engage more on social media? Do you want us to do another type of show that you've been itching for us to do? Who knows? Let us know.
Do you have requests of specific productions to cover?
The artists you want us to really interview? I mean, some artists we would love to get on, but they're really busy. But if you got a certain artist you would love to hear us chat with, we would happily take that onto our list of people to do. So there we go. All right. Jill, where can people find and follow you?
Yes, people can find and follow me at Jillian.Robinson96 on Instagram. You can keep up with my artist adventure, which is goes alongside Cup of Hemlock stuff. So keep your eyes peeled there for stuff down the line.
Ryan, give us that classic Ryan Borochovitz stuff we've come to know over the last 100 episodes.
100 episodes. I'm not active on social media. I know I made my one-time exception during the roundup, but yeah, you don't need to follow me. I'm not very active or interested in being all that active on social media. On the one that I use, that's Facebook. I just basically post these episodes when they're new, so you might as well just follow Cup of Hemlock, that's COH Theater, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. On YouTube, like, share, subscribe. Do the podcast things if you're listening to this as a podcast. You know the drill. This ain't your first rodeo. But if this is your first rodeo and you tune into this 100th episode celebration, welcome. You've heard what we do. Tune into some old episodes and actually, like, we just shouted out some recommendations that we really like. Tune into those or others that maybe seem interesting to you. Now's your chance. Getting on the ground floor 100 episodes in.
Yes. You can follow me at Mackenzie on all social media platforms. You can check out my other podcast, Before the WD Musical Podcast, where I talk all about musicals. We are currently on hiatus, looking like now till November, or maybe early next year at this point. Who knows? We'll see. But either way, we are currently on hiatus, but there is 4 seasons worth of content for you to catch up on. And each episode is also almost 2 hours or longer. So there's definitely lots of time to fill, a lot of hours to fill in there. So check it on out. Until then, everybody, stay healthy, stay safe, and we will see you all in episode 101. Thanks.
Cheers, awesome humans.